Revved Up is an episode of Teen Titans which, in its final season, may seem inconsequential. And I guess it technically is, since the few things it does resolve are things that you can read into the show anyway, and the few things that it does seem to progress or set up are never going to get resolved anyway. But rewatching the show, even rewatching it as slowly as I have been over such a wide stretch of time, I definitely feel like this episode is necessary. This season, while it has had its comedic moments for sure, has been relatively heavy. It's been a relatively plot-driven season, and the last 4 episodes after Revved Up are the flashback to how the Titans came together as a group, the resolution to this current, pretty seriously taken arc, and then the last episode of the show, which is like super depressing, if I remember correctly. And I do. I really dislike that episode. It's burned into my mind forever. But anyway, I feel like we needed this last bit of levity prior to moving on to all of that heavy stuff. And especially if you're coming back to this show years later and watching it all at once, even more quickly than I have been, or binging it, I think you definitely need this episode to lighten the mood before the story starts up again, for lack of a better term. The plot of this episode, though, is exceedingly simple. A villain called Ding Dong Daddy, who is another one of those absolutely bonkers, old-style DC characters, has stolen a case from Robin somehow, and he's riding around in this old-style, like, 50s-esque hot rod, but it's got all this souped-up tech in it. Like, this guy's obviously way more capable than he seems, and he decides that he'll only give the case back if they can beat him in a race. He gives him a map. Seems like maybe this was his plan all along. I don't know why. I don't know what he was trying to accomplish via this, unless he just really likes to race and defeat competent people or something. That's like his weird anime hang-up or whatever. But like immediately when the girls try to just fly over him to the finish line, he has a device installed in his car that can neutralize their flight abilities, which is just bonkers. Like, what else did he have in there that he could have just used to win outright against the Titans, but didn't because they didn't fit the race theme? It was just stuff that he had there in case his opponents tried to break the race theme of his chosen battle style. In that, it kind of felt like something like, I don't know, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Or something, where combat is handled specifically through the gimmick of the show, and like, you can fight people other ways, but usually you don't, and the villains typically have something in place to stop you from doing so anyway, which made me wonder if it was a nod to anime of that style. And there's a couple main gags that carry on throughout the entire episode. Robin's on his motorcycle, Beast Boy and Cyborg are in the T-car. The girls are now separated because they were knocked out of the air and everyone passed them by and too quickly for them to get picked up. Now they're having to hitchhike to the finish line, if possible. And Robin seems to be the only one taking this seriously, since the contents of the case are very important to him on a personal level. And he gets roughly 1/3 of the episode to do that and be pretty serious about this chase. So the episode uses that to give us actual genuine action, with the T-car stuff being used for gags where the T-car is slowly disassembled over the course of the race. Like, there's less and less of the car each time a sequence with the car ends. And the girls get into funny scenarios while trying to find a way to catch up with the others. And I have to wonder, I remember reading way back when I started this season, they weren't able to get all of the actors in the booth as much as they wanted to actually interact with each other and play off of each other. So I wonder if they structured this episode the way they did, so that they wouldn't have to get them all in at once, but they could still get some interplay between Starfire and Raven and Cyborg and Beast Boy, for example. Like, Robin mainly interacts in this episode with the villain and with Red X, who shows up later, who is voiced by the same person, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's gotta be. He sounds just like him, right? So, like, it feels like this was an episode made the way it is in part because that's just the kind of episode they were able to make. that it was made this way out of necessity. But if I didn't know about that specific limitation of this season, I never would have guessed that might even possibly be one of the factors that went into this episode's creation. So everything just works really, really well. The various dynamics that they choose to give us here are dynamics that we have seen in the show before, but they're ones that are always enjoyable to see, and it's nice to see these characters interact here the way they do, because they feel so familiar with each other. Like, there are other noteworthy direct interactions between Starfire and Raven, for example. But it always felt like they were supposed to be learning something about each other or something, right? Here, they just feel like very, very good friends or family. And that was just really nice. It was just really nice to see that, to experience that along with them. And the gags here mostly land. I didn't think they were like laugh out loud funny, but I was chuckling and I enjoyed myself. And it is always pretty fun just in general to see this more 90s-esque serious version of a superhero team take on these old school style characters who could just basically do whatever the plot needs them to do. Like Ding Dong Daddy, which is a ridiculous name, by the way. But Ding Dong Daddy has a mobile pit stop that's manned by these little demon things. And that's just so weird. And I love it. But Red X does show up, and eventually more villains show up, including Control Freak, who seems to be driving the Batmobile, but like with a Nightwing symbol on it or something, maybe? I don't know, but definitely a Batmobile reference. But it doesn't really devolve into like a wacky races kind of thing. The other villains just show up so we can get another moment with Red X and Robin, where we're meant to question what Red X's deal is. Okay, so I've talked about Red X before. This was such an effective, technically pair of scenes, I guess, right? This was such an effective pair of scenes with him. He starts out competing with Robin to try to get the case from Ding Dong Daddy. But when he's forced to abandon his own motorcycle and Robin saves him and brings him onto his, he realizes how important the case really is to Robin, and then he goes back to hold the various villains that are chasing them off. And later, in that other half of the scene with him, he implies that it was because he felt like he owed Robin one and didn't want to. But the way he says his line before he jumps off to go hold back the villains, he's like, this case is really important to you, isn't it? And the way he says it really sounds like he genuinely cares about Robin. So what is his deal? We still don't know. It was just such an effective little 1-2 punch of, you still don't know who the heck this guy is, and we're not going to give you anything. Because it could be either way. I don't know. It's so great. And then there's the girls. They have to pretend to be villains at one point, like relatively lame villains, to get onto a bus of a bunch of villains loading up onto a bus. And I wonder, are they villains who are loading up onto a bus to go to the next couple of episodes and join up with the baddie group? And they accidentally stop this entire group of villains from joining up with the enemy? But they end up having to pretend to be villains and commandeer this bus. And somehow they catch up with the other racers almost entirely. It's very funny. It's such a funny episode. And I'm having to fight not to explain more of the jokes than I already have, because it takes away from the viewing experience of the episode. But then at the end, first of all, we see that Robin seemingly had a plan the entire time to deal with Ding Dong Daddy. He was just waiting to spring it until Ding Dong Daddy... I can't believe the villain's name is Ding Dong Daddy. Until Ding Dong Daddy was sure that he had won so that it would be most effective. Which was cool. It was a cool Robin moment. But then at the end, throughout this entire episode, one of the through lines has been the various other groups speculating what could be in the case, but coming to accept that they need to accept their friend's privacy. So at the end, when Robin says, I want to show you what's in the case, paraphrasing, they're like, no, Robin, we understand. Sometimes things have to remain private, even between good friends, or something to that effect. And Robin, the one-time most private member of this group, who was always part of the group, but who still had his own life separate from theirs, that he kept private from theirs. He says, "I used to believe that. But now he doesn't anymore, and it shows such growth for the character." And then, after all of this build-up, that he opens the case. It's just such a good episode. I really can't recommend it enough. And as weird as it sounds, considering that it has nothing to do with the plotline of the season, it's got me, for lack of a better term, revved up to continue watching. So, since we only have 4 more episodes to go after this one, not counting the movie, which I'm also going to talk about, obviously, I'm going to be inserting additional reviews into my schedule. I know I just said I was going to do that with Steven Universe Comics. I might be moving those to every 2 weeks. Actually, the more I think about it. But I know I just said that about Steven Universe Comics, but I'm going to do it with this too. Crossing my fingers I don't drive myself insane. So I can get through Titans as quickly as possible, because I really want to wrap this show up, because I'm just that anxious to watch the rest at this point. But yeah, revved up. Good episode. Not my favorite episode of the season, I don't think, but it's very enjoyable for what it is. As per usual, I'd like to know, what do you think of the Teen Titans episode Revved Up if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.